Well, hello and welcome to session number 1 in our Escape the Matrix series. Session number 1 is going to be about strategic planning, and I'm going to throw some concepts at you, some principles. Not a whole lot of detail, but I don't want you to get too stressed out. I want you to relax, kind of take it in, just kind of absorb the information, get the general idea. We'll get into more details as we go further on into the series. And so with that in mind, we're just going to sit by this nice little stream here and listen to the water rustle over the rocks and relax, take in some of these ideas and concepts and see if any of these or which of these might resonate with you. You know, these little background shots that you see on my videos, some of my videos anyway, I've taken myself. This is some of the areas where I live in very close proximity in the mountains of Central America. And the things that I'm going to talk to you about are concepts, ideas, principles, methods, strategies. These are all things that I've used myself. And you know, I started this trek perhaps 25, 30 years ago, and at that time we were not as advanced as people are today in dealing with securing the strong man, becoming the secured creditor, changing their legal status, that type of thing. And so I took a route of practical methods for removing myself from the system as much as possible, taking a low profile, extracting myself from the trappings of living on the treadmill, as most people do. And it's those practical solutions and strategies that I'll be sharing with you here today. All right? So, we're going to get into that, have a little bit of fun, start the process out. We're going to lay a little bit of the foundation here on what exactly we're going to be getting into, perhaps a little bit further down the road. And with that, we've got an awful lot we can accomplish. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so right up front, let's take a look at what your options are. You know, everyone has a different situation. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution for this scenario. And in terms of creating your own strategic plan, obviously you've got to take into consideration what your own circumstances are, what your goals are, what you're able to do, what you're not able to do, and there's just a number of factors that come into play. So we're going to recognize those, and I'm going to lay out for you here just a few of the central themes that you might consider in terms of creating your own objectives, what type of procedure, what type of strategy that you'd like to put together. All right, so in terms of strategies, I've kind of broken it down into just a few. So let's review those. Okay, first of all, you can stay put, stay right where you are, play the game by the rules, and just kind of keep doing what you've been doing. That's a viable option for some people. You might consider yourself getting to be more elderly than not, and with the ties that you have, with perhaps a lack of mobility for any reason, any form of physical condition, handicaps, family ties that require your presence, just a lot of factors can come into play. But in those kind of scenarios, you may very well be a candidate for just staying where you're at and playing the game by the rules. All right? There's a way to do that, to do it intelligently and to do it successfully. Okay? So we're going to get into that a little bit, and I'll elaborate a little further as we go on. All right? So that's one option for some people that are just limited in what their capacity is in terms of mobility or being aggressive and changing their status and so forth. All right, so we understand that, and there's good options for those people. The next option is kind of taking one step further. You may have commitments that you just are not able or willing to walk away from, and that being the case, you may not have a need or a desire to change your legal status, but you are interested in creating perhaps an alter ego on the other side of the fence. There's a lot of folks that are doing that. They maintain their citizenship status, they keep a very low profile in that status, but then they go and create an alter ego on the other side of the fence. And by that I mean either offshore or in another legal venue, operating through trusts. And we're not talking necessarily, geographically. When I'm talking venues, I'm talking legal status and jurisdiction. It can be right in your backyard. You could have a separate legal status and jurisdiction for some entity, individual, property, whatever. All right? So you keep 1 foot on one side of the fence and you put 1 foot on the other side of the fence. All right? This parallel existence, again, could be offshore, could be in another legal venue, operating through trusts. But this alter ego on the other side of the fence, this is your parallel existence. Your alter ego that really has no direct relation to you, but as you continue to operate at a minimum kind of subsistence level in the system, you can create wealth, create business activity, create just another entire life altogether on the other side of the fence. And one really never needs to meet the other. Okay, so you've got two completely different scenarios. So if you feel a need for whatever reason to maintain status quo, but only to minimize that, but looking to the future, and this probably deals more with finances than anything else. Okay, if you're going to stay with 1 foot in the system as a citizen and continue along those lines because of your own personal needs and objectives, then you can create this alter ego offshore or in another legal venue and build substance there that operates by a completely different set of rules. Okay? And the rules most applicable that would be of interest would relate to taxation, confiscation, control, manipulation, spying, reporting, all that type of thing. Okay? So that's creating a parallel existence. I hope I've been able to elaborate enough where you got a clear picture of that. So that's kind of the next step after the first one. All right? Next, most of you are very well aware that you can bug out legally. You're going to bug out of that citizenship status, being a U.S. citizen slave or UK citizen slave or wherever you're from, and revert back to the natural law, God's law, common law, and operate in that venue. All right? And when you do that, you've got to make sure that all the accoutrements of your life also go along with you. And that's what a lot of people don't think about. All right? The practical matters. You could have a certain legal status, but if you continue operating like you always have in the system, using the tools of the system and benefiting from the system without making any changes, then if they ever drag you into court, the judge is going to take silent judicial notice of that and say, oh, well, all right, so you are a resident doing business in the state of, and we'll just consider you one of ours in terms of chattel property, and we'll do what we always do. Okay? So if you're going to do the legal status correction routine, which I would highly recommend for most people, you've got to take care of the practical matters as well, right? So that's going to the next extreme, okay? And more people are doing that, and that's very attractive for a lot of reasons. Next, we can just bug out physically. just get the heck out of Dodge. The Bible says when they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. There's a certain amount of merit to that, right? So, and there's a lot of reasons. I'm urging people, whenever I can, looking at all the potential situations that could be and seem to be developing in the United States. I'm telling people, just if you can, just get the hell out now. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I think that's the safest thing to do if you can. And so bugging out physically is one other aspect of this, and that entails a whole different series of discussions, right? Citizenship, residency, setting up business, banking, all that type of thing, and we'll get into some of that here today. And that's kind of what I'm leading up to here, is learning to live the international lifestyle of a PT. Perpetual traveler, permanent tourist, previous taxpayer, right? It's very attractive. It's a very attractive lifestyle. I can speak from experience. Really, I started this years ago, and it's the best thing I ever did. But that's not for everybody. And you know what? Living the international lifestyle of a PT does not necessarily mean that you have to move away from where you're currently at. Sleight of hand is a wonderful tool when you learn to master it. And you can be right where you're at this very moment in your hometown and set yourself up as a PT so that wherever you go, even in your hometown, if it's not a small town where everybody knows each other, you can appear as though you're from somewhere else. So again, when you're in front of the judge or talking to the cop and they look at your papers and they say, oh, you're not a resident, you're not doing business in the state of, you're passing through, you're a visitor. Oh, sorry, okay, our corporate revenue rules don't apply to you. So go on along your business and have a nice day. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. I've had that happen on several occasions. All right, so there are certain benefits to that, living the international lifestyle of a PT. So these are the primary options that you have at your disposal, and it's not a case where each one is mutually exclusive of the others. In fact, you can kind of mix and match some of these, right? You can live the lifestyle of a PT and you will have perhaps bugged out physically and legally, and you might also have created a parallel existence, leaving some anchors, back home. Okay, so you can kind of mix and match a little bit in some of these, and so we'll get into some of the details, and let's get started on that right now. Let's go right into the option number one: staying put and playing the game by the rules. So option one really isn't an option. This is where everybody needs to start, no matter what your plan or strategy is going to be. So we have to learn the rules. We've got to learn what are our rights. Where do we draw the line when we start getting harassed and abused by public servants? So to understand how things work, we need to understand commerce and contracts and trust law. And if this is all new to you, don't be daunted. It's not that terribly complicated, and anybody can do it. You just have to take the time and apply yourself. And in doing so, you're going to end up being able to better protect what you have. And that's the starting point for any war strategy. Protect the ground you have and then move forward. But if you can't protect what you have, then you better not go anywhere. Okay? It's pretty simple. So, the reason we have so much abuse of the people going on right now is, frankly, because the people ask for it. We only have ourselves to blame. We don't learn what we need to know to keep our public servants honest, and we let them run roughshod over us time and time again. They get used to it. It becomes a pattern. And they begin to train new people accordingly that, hey, you don't need to be accountable to the law because the people are too damn stupid to know any better anyway. So they'll do whatever you say. They do whatever they want, having their way with us, filling their coffers in the process and making us all poor. And they bring these jugheads in that are emotionally and intellectually stunted into the police training programs. They have Napoleonic complexes, and the only way they can make themselves feel superior or important is to go out and just beat the crap out of somebody. And that's what's going on. You know it as well as I do. The courts do the same thing in a different way, and it's our fault. We let them do it. We're too damn stupid to know any better and to take control of the situation. All right, so if you want to continue being a victim, then you should just continue being ignorant, the way most of us have been throughout our lives. Now, when I started this path, I started with a 40-hour video course. VHS videos. It was put on by George Gordon. Yeah, George Gordon and Bill Hallstrom, the barristers in School of Common Law. And boy, they made it entertaining, talking about how some of their antics in the courtrooms just befuddled the judges, and taking all these real-life scenarios and going through them, role-playing. And it was really a joy to watch them. So not only was I entertained, but I learned a hell of a lot. I started going into courts, putting it into practice, and lo and behold, the stuff worked. So you can do the same thing. Now, I've got a better course than what I went through, much more professionally presented, much more detailed, and it's actually put on by an attorney. This is the Jurisdictionary course, it's called, and you can cram the course in a couple of days. Okay, you can get through it in a couple of days, and it's about the same duration, you know, about 30 to 40 hours worth of video training. Sit back, watch it in segments. You know, you can watch a 30-minute to 1 hour segment perhaps on one specific topic. There's quizzes, there's references, there's sample documents, just a complete library on how to win in court without an attorney. And I couldn't recommend this more. I've subscribed to it. I've gotten through about half of it so far, and I am just thoroughly delighted by the content and the value that it has. Okay, so look up this course, subscribe to it, and take it. Don't wait until it's too late. Study this stuff before you need it, so that you can get this under your belt and then move on to more substantive material. All right? Next, I've done a video workshop called Escape the Matrix. And this is important from the standpoint of looking at the paradigms that we need to adjust in our lives and kind of framing the key issues that are involved in protecting ourselves and starting to think like an owner and claim ownership to our lives rather than as a subject and a slave. Okay, so I get into a number of important issues there on framing these paradigms, and then there are 5 shifts required in how we deal with these paradigms, and I get into those as well. So this is a good foundational background to really kind of frame the issues as you look at becoming more empowered, more capable in defending yourself, in dealing with the world around us, and having a greater impact, you know, and achieving success in your goals and objectives in life. Okay, so that's important. Now, you really need to build up your library. You know, you ought to have on the bookshelf a Black's Law Dictionary. Get a police officer's handbook for your state. You can do a search on Amazon. Just do a search for Police Officer's Handbook, California, or something to that effect, and you'll come up with several examples. These are invaluable. You know, they get into specific training in court cases as it relates to all kinds of issues. But for example, you know, how police should handle searches and seizures, traffic stops, you know, warrants, dealing with drug cases, all kinds of things. You name it. And this is the police training manual, backed up by case law. All right, so you want to know how to deal with police and know where to draw the line? This is what you need. Okay? Very important. Wouldn't be bad to get a book on federal rules of civil procedure. And you know, in our members area, we have a carousel of important books, and many of these are in there. You can find them right in there. But just do a search on Amazon and you'll find these things. Black's Law Dictionary, try and get the 6th edition or earlier. Don't get one of the newer versions. They keep diluting it, changing the definitions, okay? Next, right in our own members area, if you go into Theaters of Operation on the main menu, and then in the sub-menu, go down to Commercial Law, and you'll find 3 really important treatises that will make the light bulb go on for you. The UCC Connection by Howard Freeman, by Hartford Van Dyke, a video on commercial law, commercial liens, holding public officials accountable. And the other one here is really, really well written and quite eye-opening. Okay? This will really lay things out for you on the Uniform Commercial Code and in commercial law, which really governs everything. You know, you get that down and, you know, you've got just about everything down right there. All right, that's free for you in your members area. All right, so you've got really to protect whatever you own. That's the whole idea, and that's what you're doing this for. All right, so that if and when you are confronted by public servants in one capacity or another, they are there to serve you. They are not there to harass you, intimidate you, or violate your rights. And there's only one person that's going to keep them in line, and that's you. If you don't know these things, well then guess what? They're going to have their way with you. And that's just the way it works, okay? So protection is very important. Do some prepping. You know, get yourself in a position where, you know, you could handle any kind of situation that might come up, and you know there's a number of scenarios that are looming over our heads that could happen. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to get down that rabbit trail, but in that line of thinking, you might start a home-based business in a tax-exempt trust. All right, in terms of protecting what you have, one of the things you need to do is just stop doing business in your own name. Stop putting your name on things. Just stop. Everywhere you go, they want a name and an address, a name and an address, a name and an address. And all of a sudden, you're in every database in the damn world. And you don't need that. That's not what you want. If you want to be private, protected, okay? If you go watch my video workshop called The Perpetual Traveler, that gets into some important issues on jurisdiction and, of course, the travel issue, being able to travel versus license to drive. Gets into certificate of registration, driver's license, jurisdictional issues, understanding the different types of jurisdiction that are applied. And guess what? If you don't understand jurisdiction and how that applies, you'll be stumbling and bumbling into all kinds of jurisdictions that you're not even aware of, which again makes you subject when you don't necessarily need to be. So understanding jurisdiction, how to stay in one, how to stay out of another, is critically important. Okay? So the Perpetual Traveler is one of the video workshops you're going to want to take a look at. And then one of the things you want to do in this section of your planning is learn to drop off the radar. Get off the radar. Get off the databases. Again, stop doing business in your name. Learn how to do business in trusts. Learn how to protect assets in trusts. And there are trusts, and then there are other kinds of trusts. All right, I mentioned a tax-exempt trust, and those are easy to find if you know where to look. Okay, we've got a free video in the members area or on YouTube. When is a trust not a trust? And you should have a look at that. That will open your eyes to some very critical information on the power and impact of the contractual business organization. When is a trust not a trust? When it's a contract in the form of a trust. Looks like a trust, smells like a trust, but it's really a contract. So that's the answer. When is a trust not a trust? When it's a contract. So take advantage of that video. As far as dropping off the radar, as I was just talking about, we have another members only video presentation on changing your legal status. Whether you want to change your legal status or not, towards the end of this presentation, there are, maybe 15, 20 different items you can do to actually just kind of disappear in plain sight. You don't have to go anywhere, but you just end up dropping off the radar. And being able to use sleight of hand, throw people off the trail, is very helpful, especially when it's needed, and a lot of fun sometimes. And we get into that a little bit there. So these are just some resources I'm throwing at you to get you off on the right track. Okay? So as you make your plan, start putting together the key elements of your strategy. These are some points that you're going to need to consider, and perhaps you haven't yet. Okay? We've talked a lot about legal status, and a lot of people are very attracted to the idea of moving out of U.S. citizenship mode into state citizenship or secured creditor, or whatever term you want to allocate to that. In any event, very important. But what a lot of people don't think of is, well, okay, once you've got your paperwork confirmed, acknowledged, and in hand, how are you going to work your way off of the system? There are all the accoutrements. You're still doing banking, you're still dealing in the coin of the realm, you still likely have a corporate job, you still likely have the street number on your home, dealing with addresses in the databases. All these things are important. You can't just wave, magic papers and expect the world to bow down, at your feet. There's more to it than that. So we'll talk about some of those things, okay? What kind of visibility do you have? All right? What's your profile? What kind of profile do you want to have? Maybe you're a public personality and you're confident in your position, and that's not really an issue. On the other hand, maybe you've been a political activist in your local area. You're already a target to a degree, and you want to just keep your head down. Okay? So these are issues to consider. What kind of visibility do you want to have? And there are things you need to do that go along with that to make that happen. Okay? We talked about jurisdiction a little bit. That kind of goes with legal status, but you need to understand jurisdiction. And where is admiralty? Where is equity? Where is common law? Where are these venues? And how do you stay in one versus the other? And what are the benefits of one versus the other? Okay? It's not complicated, but you just need to understand these things. And if you do paperwork, I see it all the time. People do paperwork, but they don't understand what the hell they're signing. And then when an attorney or a bankruptcy judge or somebody is questioning them on it, they just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know. That's the worst thing that could happen to you. You lose all credibility and you can't defend your documents. So don't do paperwork if you can't defend them, if you don't understand it. Critical point. Assets. What kind of assets do you have that might be at risk? Okay, the obvious one is automobile. All right, that's one of the higher risk assets that there are, just in terms of potential liability if you get in an accident. All right, so a vehicle needs to be compartmentalized, perhaps in some type of entity like a contractual trust, where if any liability accrues to the owner of that asset, it doesn't attach to anything else. Right now, the way most people operate is everything's in their name. They're out on the road, they get into an accident, the other party sues them, and they lose everything they have. Not only the car, but their home, their business, their savings, their investments, the college fund for the kids, and whatever else they've got. Okay? So you've got to learn proper asset management, whether we're talking vehicles, investment accounts, operating businesses, gold and silver storage, whatever those things might be. And I know a lot of folks are showing a very low bar on the graph for the asset column right now, but you've got to be thinking in terms of increasing that. If you're not in a good financial position, you need to start thinking in terms of doing something different, where you own and control your own time, you own and control your own income, and you do it in such a way that no one's got their hand out looking for a slice of it. All right? So asset protection is something that you need to consider. Documents. What kind of documents are you going to be dealing with in terms of the legal status you do have? Identification, travel, these kind of things. And we'll get into some of the different options here as we go along, which will have a bearing on what kind of documents you have. But these are things to consider. If you're going to change your legal status, how are you going to change your documents? You can't be no longer a U.S. citizen and run around with a state-issued driver's license, can you? So these are things to consider. All right. Finances. We talked a little bit about having a job. How can you be a free person, not a non-U.S. citizen, and maintain a corporate job? If you're considered an employee with all the deductions being taken out of your paycheck and W-2s, W-4s, all these federal forms, FICA, FUTA, Medicare, Obamacare, all these deductions, you've got to start thinking about alternate finances. How are you going to do business? Are you going to continue to use the coin of the realm with the Federal Reserve notes? That's pretty much accepting jurisdiction. Or are you going to start thinking about using some different medium of exchange, which would then verify that you are no longer receiving franchise benefits as a subject slave? Start using gold and silver. Carrot Bars is an excellent company. I know many people involved in that. I've had personal experience with Carrot Bars. Excellent company. I've taken physical possession of the Carrot Bar 1 gram of gold card, and I've sold them on the street, no problem. Street brokers. I don't want to call them street brokers, but just brokers in the business. I just go up to their office off the street, and they look at it and go, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll give you a spot minus my commission." Okay, fine. So Carrot Bars is good. What about cryptocurrency? Many of you know I'm involved in a cryptocurrency company. Cryptocurrency is the payment system of the future. Get involved. If you were to, for example, purchase an automobile with cryptocurrency, create a bill of sale showing that so many crypto coins were used in the purchase as opposed to Federal Reserve notes, US dollars, fiat currency, whatever country you're in, that's just more evidence that you're operating in a different realm, a different jurisdiction. All right, to do that, you likely are going to need to start thinking about being more independent business-wise, have more independent income generated, get rid of the corporate job. I've said that once, I've said it 100 times. And that just takes putting your mind to it. It's not difficult. We've got an internet business training program we offer for free. People are making millions of dollars in the cryptocurrency business. You want to learn about that? Let me know. I've already, in a very short time, done very well in that. People will look around and say, well, what do I have that I can, what can I sell on the marketplace? Well, get involved with a company that's got a good product or a service already and simply become an affiliate. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Everything's all set, ready to go for you. Find the market and just be the bridge to that market. So finances is something you need to think about. What type of currency, what medium of exchange are you going to use? If you're in fact going to change your legal status, that's something to consider. All right, so as you go through these various steps and different elements of your plan, your strategic plan, there's going to be different stages and transitions because you can't do it all at once, right? It's just going to take a little bit of time, and you're going to need to establish some priorities. What are your goals and objectives? What's your time frame? What do you need to start with? Perhaps you've already accomplished several things. I know many of our members have already advanced in a great way on many issues. All right, but I would suggest get yourself a 3-ring binder, get some separators to put in there, some tabs, and break it down into the different phases that you're going to need to accomplish, and then fill it up with some pages, start taking some notes, chart your progress, put your to-do lists in here, and get organized. Write down your goals. Goals are worthless if they're not written with a timeline. All right, if you're thinking, well, maybe someday I can accomplish some of these things, you know what? You've already failed. Don't even try. You know, someday is not on the calendar. If you look for it, I guarantee you will never find someday. It doesn't show up there. All right, you got to get serious. You got to get serious about this and treat it like a business. Planning your life is your business. You need to treat it like a business and don't be so casual about it and lackadaisical. This is where, you know, people fall down time and time again. They're just not serious. They don't get organized. They don't treat their own business in a professional manner, and nothing ever happens. And then they wonder why. Oh, it just wasn't meant to be. Well, perhaps not, you know, because you never made a point to have it meant to be, right? So I'm just sharing my observations on what I've come across over the years. So please don't take anything personally. But so these mediums of exchange need to be thought of. You need to determine, what are you going to deal with there? What dependencies do you have? And this is an interesting topic. What kind of dependencies would hold you back? I've already talked about being dependent on a corporate paycheck. All right, that's one dependency. You may be dependent on government assistance checks, disability income, Social Security, things like that. Well, I guarantee you, the amounts you're receiving on those checks are minuscule compared to what you could be generating for yourself if you had your own business. And so many people talk themselves down. Oh, I couldn't do that. I don't know anything. I don't know anybody. I've never done that before. It's not for me. Well, maybe it's not. But you can do what you want to do. You just have to decide you want to do it. And you can do it. It's not hard. There's all the help in the world available to you if you really set your mind to something. You can surround yourself with good people, knowledgeable, experienced, that will help you along the way. So you can do what you want to do, but what dependencies do you have? Are you dependent on your local grocery store being there? What would happen if that grocery store closed and all the others in the city did? If there was some catastrophic event, you know that the entire transportation system, the whole inventory of these stores is within 3 days of depletion. If the trucks stop rolling for any reason, it'll be less than a week before people are roaming the streets looking for food. Where are you going to be in that situation? Do you have what you need so that you're not 100% dependent on the supermarket? I talked earlier about prepping. This feeds into that theme. What other dependencies do you have? Prescription drugs. Do you have a supply of prescription drugs that you need? take a look and ask yourself, do you really even need those prescription drugs? I was taking prescription drugs for cholesterol and blood pressure. And I started doing some reading, and I discovered I was doing more harm to myself by taking those damn things than I was by not. And that the conditions could be dealt with in other ways. And so I'm saving myself about $150, $200 a month, and probably extending my life by not taking those damn things. And you know all about Big Pharma, right? If this information is a shock to you, you got some reading to do. But you're well informed, so you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure of that. All right, so look at your dependencies. You know, if the world were to blow up today, what would I be dependent on? And freedom is the result of being independent. So you've got to be able to eliminate these dependencies, okay? Your water supply. What kind of water supply you have? City water? Is that all you got? Okay, think about that. These are important elements. Water, food, drugs, tools, implements. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. But dependencies are important to look at and evaluate as you're making your plan, because they need to go into your plan. Next, let's talk about the mode of business. How are you actually going to be conducting business? Do you have a current business that you're operating at the moment? Are you going to do something different with that? Are you going to start a new business, create more independence in your life? You've got a current business. Let's say you're running a pizza restaurant. That's very local. You're immersed in the local environment, local jurisdiction, operating according to those rules. That's all well and good. You can actually transfer the beneficial interest of that operation to someone outside the venue. By someone, I'm talking a trust or some other type of legal entity, so that you can actually transfer ownership. That gets more into asset protection discussion, but you're not likely going to be able to change much in terms of local licensing, that type of thing. So if you're dealing in a brick and mortar business in the local jurisdiction, you might start thinking about expanding your business concept to go beyond the local jurisdiction and start operating in the international arena, where it's much more free from the local revenue regulations. You with me? So that's a discussion in and of itself, but that can be done quite easily, very easily. Just a matter of setting up the entity and setting up the business platform, and away you go. You know, it could be a little more than some type of private contract trust, a website, and then arrange your banking, any one of a number of different ways. Again, that's another discussion, but you can do it quite easily. So as far as mode of business goes, look at where you're at. If you have a current business, you want to expand that concept so you can start generating more and greater activity outside the local venue. Do you not have any business activity and perhaps need to start one? That can be done quite easily. Or just what do you want to do? So evaluate where you're at on your mode of business. Where do you want to go with that that's going to contribute to your freedom quotient, and make some plans accordingly. Okay, so I'm just planting that seed with you now, because that is an important element of your planning, and then of course the detailed discussion that must come later. All right, so we need to look at the end objective. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 6 months? Where do you want to be in a year? What's your end game, the ultimate objective? With that, you can kind of work your way back on a timeline as to what you need to accomplish in segments to get to that end objective. Okay, in other words, break it down into sub-goals, sub-objectives that can be done one at a time, or perhaps several at a time, depending on what they are, if they're not necessarily needing to be in chronological order. All right, so break down the end game, break it down into smaller bite-sized objectives, steps along the path to get there, and put some time frames to it, and pretty much you'll have a plan. All right, that plan will be there for you. It should be flexible. Things are going to change because not everything you envision at this point in time is likely going to be the end result when you finally get there, but that's the fun of the journey, is some of the pleasant surprises that you'll find out that you can do perhaps more than you thought you could along the way, and those things will be added to your plan. All right, so that makes it kind of fun and interesting, and of course there's always the challenges and the obstacles that come up too, okay, that could set you back time-wise, or you know, it's an adventure. It's an adventure. So that's why you need the binder to keep track of these things, make notes, put your thoughts down, make adjustments, and have it all down there in front of you. So that's going to be your manual to move you forward. Okay, you've got the benchmarks where you can check off as you go, see the progress that you're making. And that's important. It gives you encouragement. If you can break things down into smaller steps, you accomplish those, you check them off. It gives you a sense of satisfaction, encourages you to move on to the next step. Okay, so those are the elements to consider, and at least some of the key ones. And if you get those organized, put down into a binder, make a plan, you will find yourself moving forward in a very positive direction rather than just kind of aimlessly if you don't get organized, get serious, and get professional about it. Okay? So let's move on now to the next option that we talked about earlier. Okay, so let's look at option 2 and create a parallel existence. This is really an easy concept. The idea is that you just keep on being a good citizen with a low profile. You file your taxes, make sure you maintain a low income, just barely enough to pay expenses so you don't have any tax obligations, but you're filing, you're looked at as a good, compliant citizen doing your duty. And insofar as that goes, obviously no red flags, everything is cool, you keep on going and doing what you're doing, and you keep on, you know, taking advantage of the state benefits that are offered to you. Driver's license, who knows what, you know, all that stuff. So anyway, perhaps you feel that maybe you can't, or you're not willing to give up those citizen benefits, right? And you feel that you don't want to do anything to bring attention to yourself. Okay, this would be the possible scenario for you in that case. And so you will need to learn to be a pauper on paper, so nobody can steal anything from you, right? You insulate yourself, you build a moat around your castle. Yet at the same time, you have the keys to an entire kingdom which you are creating in a different venue. So in this scenario, you're going to create an alter ego offshore or in the private using private tax-exempt contract trusts or a foundation or corporate entity in a different venue, right? So this is going to be your alter ego on the other side of the fence, where you would build your wealth, net worth, business assets, investment accounts, those type of things that would need to be protected, number one, and need to grow in a very tax-friendly environment. Okay? So this is a good option for people who are aggressive and business-minded and have a sense for adventure in making the world their own kingdom, yet at the same time have certain ties or obligations or circumstances where they don't feel that a change in legal status would really suit their needs. Okay? This is particularly useful for people of higher net worth who have assets to deal with and protect, or those who are young enough and eager to build a higher net worth. Maybe you're just starting out, but you feel you've got time on your side to be able to create the proper structure where you can build something of worth and substantial net value, net asset value, but you don't want the liability that goes along with that when it's attached to your name. Okay? and that just goes without saying. So, having said that, once this parallel existence is created, you have a structure set up to provide for self-sustenance. And it would be hard to argue not doing a legal status change. Okay? So this may be a process, a stepping stone to going into that legal status change. But again, if not, then you've got an alternate structure, an alter ego that's there to provide for you while you stay home as a good citizen and do your minimal reporting, report your salary, and take your deductions, and do your filings, and end up hopefully with a net zero tax liability. Okay, so that's something that you need to determine for yourself. All right, so that's the idea of creating a parallel existence. That's a whole study issue in and of itself. I'm just introducing the concept here today. We're not going to get into all the ins and outs. We'll save that for a later time in the series, okay? So then, moving on to option number 3, bug out legally. And this is where we get into legal status correction. And you would basically, in essence, remove your name as surety for the fictional corporate name, and you no longer are liable to all the corporate bankruptcy, administrative revenue regulations, all the fees and fines that go with that, the penalties, and of course, all the opportunities for incarceration. All right? Who needs that, right? So in this instance, you're removing yourself from the slave camp and moving from the land of the dead into the land of the living and the free. Now, that's not a hard choice to make, is it? All right, so this is highly recommended for most people. So what do we have to offer in that regard? All right, let me just outline that. So at the time of the production of this video, which is August 2016, we have members working on a committee to assemble information which they have personal experience with and are getting new advanced research and information which is proven to be successful in getting people recognized as non-citizens, non-subjects, ex-slaves. Okay? The proof has shown up on police computers at traffic stops when the police run the ID check. And when the information comes back from dispatch and the computer screen in the patrol car says, "Do not detain." Now we know we're on to something. In other words, do not detain means hands off. Do not interfere. Don't touch. Okay. The police in these actual cases have actually said to the parties involved that, quote, "I don't know why I can't write you a ticket. I don't understand it, but that's the order. So have a nice day." End quote. All right, so these traffic stops are only emblematic of a much larger issue and benefit to having this status. Can you imagine? All right, so what we're doing right now is coordinating and digesting the very best information available from several confirmed sources who have had proven success, have done this, have had these results, and we're putting together a simplified, streamlined educational program which provides step-by-step instructions and the necessary education, which is critical. You can't do anything with paperwork without education. All right, we talked about that before. But so this is done each step of the way in this process. So people can hop on this train and smoothly ride down the fast tracks without having to stumble and bumble, taking missteps, trying information which is not proven, which is not correct, and trying to sort through a myriad of information which you can find on the internet, which is often conflicting and as such makes the process quite difficult to follow and execute effectively. Okay, so we're boiling it all down, putting it into a streamlined educational program and process so that our members have a really good track to run on. Okay, makes sense? So that is that option. Let's talk just a little bit about asset protection. All right, very key element. It does no good to be legally correct and taking the high ground morally and legally when you know that you're dealing with criminals. And that's the state that we're in. I left the States in 1999 for one reason alone, that I realized at that time that it was a lawless society. The courts and the law is not there for the peasants to use to their benefit. They will be ignored, regardless of the law, if it interferes with the business of the state. The state is there for one reason, to do business, and they will stop at nothing, including the law, if it interferes with their business. Okay, so the only value in being on the correct side of the law is when you can simultaneously put yourself in a position of being immune. All right, so first of all, if they can't hurt you and you're also on the right side of the law, then guess what? You become a porcupine and you are the last person in the world they want to try and cause problems for. Because number one, they know that you're on top of the game, and if they bring you into court, they will more than likely suffer an embarrassment, and for no gain. There's no potential gain because there's nothing to steal from you if you've got things protected, right? So why would they take the risk of exposing their fraud in a court of public record when there's nothing to gain? It ain't going to happen. You know, they've only got so many docket spaces for that courtroom, and they want to make sure they can make it as productive as possible. You know, think of it as a business. They want paying customers, and if you're not going to be a paying customer, you're not any interest to them. Okay, so that's why asset protection is so important. So the concept of being immune to asset seizures, attachments, liens, lawsuits, judgments, other forms of distraint are incredibly simple. And I'll give you the closely held secret to being completely immune right now. You ready for it? Here it is. Don't own anything. 3 words. That's the key to asset protection. Don't own anything. So when the police haul you into court by the scruff of your neck, throw you down at a table, and the judge orders you to fill out a financial statement so they know what they can steal from you, when you honestly fill out the form and it shows that you have a used computer, a few dirty shirts, and an old dog, you can bet that they're going to be much less interested in you all of a sudden. Okay? In fact, investigators often do, if not always do, asset searches before legal actions to determine who are the best targets. Law firms, prosecutors, state and federal officials do this as their common modus operandi on a regular basis to establish high priority targets. All right, you might recall the lyrics from one of Janis Joplin's songs from the 60s, where she says, "Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose." You remember that? And it is so true. Those are words to the wise. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. And if you're in that position, guess what? You don't have the fear of loss. You cannot be intimidated or coerced into signing plea bargains or compromising your position for simply the fear of loss, especially if you're on the right side of the law. So I talk about this in the IRS Freedom Package, that if they can't get you civilly and steal your stuff, and if they can't get you criminally for willful violation of your legal obligations and duties because you're in full compliance, there's no interest in you, period. All right? So the art of achieving freedom is learning to be a pauper on paper and yet live like a king. You don't need to be the owner of that mansion that you live in. Who cares whose name on it? Get over the ego. It's not yours, but you have the key to get into it. Enjoy the swimming pool, the gardens, sleep in it every night. Invite your friends, have parties, enjoy it. Who cares whose name is on it? You've got the keys. Right? So, that's what I'm going to say on asset protection right now. That's an entirely separate subject matter, which we'll get into another time, later in the series. But understand these keys, and you'll have the right mindset to be a successful pauper on paper while living like a king. Okay? All right, so let's just real quickly review option number 4, living the international lifestyle of the PT. This is a real simple concept. You may have heard of the 5 flag concept. W.G. Hill wrote about it in his book, PT, which stands for Perpetual Traveler, Permanent Tourist, Previous Taxpayer. We've gone over that before. And I think W.G. Hill evolved his concepts from Harry Brown, who originally approached some of these concepts. So that's where I've learned it from. And in fact, we've got the book, the original book by W.G. Hill, available to members in our members area in the forum. All right, so it's about 385 pages. It's an excellent read, and it's as valid today as it was when it was written years ago. All right, so let's just review the 5 flag concept real quickly. So first of all, flag 1 is planted in your home country, where you have your citizenship. This is where you have your passport. And as you travel the world, you're identified as a citizen of this country. All right. Flag number 2 is where you establish a new residency. Just for conversational purposes, let's say your residency is in Panama. Very simple, fairly streamlined process. Some countries like Panama are trying to make it as easy as possible for foreigners to move in. Why? Because it's better than the tourism business, because these people move in and they don't go home. Because Panama now is their home, so they keep spending their money. It's good for the economy, right? And in many cases, they bring in professional talent that's needed in the labor force in the marketplace for those that are not retired. All right, there are special visas and passport programs for employees of companies. All right, so we're not going to get into all those details, but let's just say your residency now is in Panama for conversational purposes. So your 3rd flag is planted in a jurisdiction where you're going to establish or create a business. That business could very well be in, let's just say, Singapore. Very progressive country, a financial hub in Asia, very well renowned for their business acumen and infrastructure, and very close proximity to China, Hong Kong, and the entire Southeast Asia, right? All right, so your business is established in Singapore. That's just a domicile for, let's just say, a corporation or entity of some type. And then you set up your banking in the 4th jurisdiction. Let's just say that's in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is very receptive to dealing with people from Singapore and more than happy to entertain doing business with people in nearby countries that want to do business in their own country, in Hong Kong, right? And then finally, your 5th flag is planted where you like to spend really most of your time. And this might be your playgrounds. So let's just say, for example, you're a diver and you love the diving that's available in Belize, and you spend a lot of your time there vacationing, diving, enjoying the lifestyle of Belize. It's close to your home country, so it's an easy jaunt to get there if you're an American. And you know, wherever you're from, you can find similar situations, you know, in using different examples. So how does this work? Again, wherever you are, you appear as though you're from somewhere else. So let's say you're in your home country where you have your citizenship. Police pull you over, you show your residency documents in Panama. And the police all of a sudden recognizes, wow, you're not a citizen doing business in the state of, you are a foreigner. You are a tourist. Therefore, the local corporate revenue codes don't apply to you. I've had that happen on more than one occasion in the States. Police pull me over, going a little bit too fast, perhaps for the zone. And when he sees the papers, the car is a rental, and driver's license is from Panama. Then he says, "Well, you know what? You're going a little bit fast, and there's not much I can do for you right now. But next time you're passing through, just slow down a little bit and have a nice day." And that's how it goes. All right, the corporate revenue laws don't apply to you. So isn't that nice? Right in my own home country, simply because I appear as though I am from somewhere else. And in fact, you know, I am, technically speaking. All right, now, as it relates to business, when you're in business, especially these days, there are so many freeloaders and troublemakers. If anyone feels that you have money, whether you do or don't, if it appears as though you do, in some countries, just by virtue of the fact you're a foreigner doing business, they just assume you have money. And you know what? These troublemakers can cause a major headache. I know from experience. Okay, I won't get into the horror stories, but it's terrible. It's terrible. So when you've set up a business that's domiciled in a particular country, you don't want to do business in that country. All right? No activity with the locals means no problems with the locals. Yet, however, should any problem arise, what's the first thing authorities do? They go after your bank account, right? They'll freeze it if there's any questions. And these days, you don't have to do anything wrong. The governments have become completely confiscatory, looking for booty to steal, all right? So when or if there's ever any issue in the domicile of your business, your banking is not in that jurisdiction, so they can't touch it. They'd have to go do an international process in another country, which they're just not going to do. All right, unless you are a huge international criminal funneling multi-millions and billions. All right, they are not going to create a multi-jurisdictional task force to go after some guy that's just, you know, trying to live his life, right? All right, then the playgrounds, when you're in Belize diving and you're approached by anybody who wants to perhaps start an issue, you show your passport in the USA or you show your residency in Panama. They can't touch your business because that's in Singapore, and they're not going to touch your banking because that's in Hong Kong. So you are completely home free. So no matter where you are, you appear as though you're from somewhere else. Your life is compartmentalized, and basically you're home free. Now, being a PT, you would think that perhaps you need to be traveling a lot, going around the world, you know, moving around, doing a lot of travel. You can set up this structure, and once it's set up, not even move off of your couch back at home, right? It can work for you at home without having to travel after you've set it up. You're probably going to have to travel to set a couple of these structures up, and why not? Have some fun, take a vacation, and enjoy the world a little bit, different cultures and whatnot. So once it's set up, you don't have to travel or go anywhere. Again, you'll still appear as though you're from somewhere else. You've got your residency in Panama, business in Singapore, banking in Hong Kong, and you like to spend a lot of time in Belize. So you get the idea, all right? Make sense? It's a wonderful concept, and honestly, this is something that I've used on a regular basis. And it's worked for me, still works for me. All I can say is give it some thought and consideration. So in conclusion, Make no mistake, this is not a political battle. It's not to be fun or cool. We are in a spiritual battle. And we are not contending against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the world rulers of this present darkness, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. We have a mandate and a warning, which tells us, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues." In my book, One Free Man's War, there is an appendix with 100 scriptures that tell us to come out and to separate, to not follow blind guides, to not serve two masters. 100 scriptures that direct us in this very theme that we're discussing today. That's substantial. The book is worth having if for no other reason than to have that collection of scriptures. As a member in the Lighthouse Law Club, you'll get that book for free in PDF format. Otherwise, you can go to onefreemanswar.com or order it from Amazon.com. Thank you for your attention. I wish you nothing but success in putting together your strategic plan, and that you may execute it to its fullest capacity. And in the end, come out of her, my people. Take care, God bless, and until next time, have a good day.